What's up? Hey there. This is Adrienne of the Adrienne Ross Show, and I'm glad that you're tuned in to this particular episode. And before we dive in, let me say I am glad you're here. This, of course, is a product of the BMG Network. That's thebmgnetwork.com. Tell all your friends to go there, check it out. Check out the Adrienne Ross Show as well as the other podcasts that are there. And also, if you enjoy the Adrienne Ross Show, please go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating and a review, please. And I'd love to read yours on the show. Okay, so we've gotten that out of the way. And let's jump into talking about something that everyone is talking about lately. And a lot of those conversations are quite heated. I'm talking about this student loan, quote unquote, forgiveness issue that has some people rejoicing and other people, let's just say, not rejoicing. As I'm sure you know, President Biden has decided that he's going to, quote, forgive. And I'll talk about why I keep saying, quote unquote, if you haven't figured it out. But he keeps, he's talking about forgiving this debt for up to $20,000 for some people, up to $10,000 for other people. And from what I understand, this will cost about $24 billion a year. Can you imagine? $24 billion a year. So I say, quote unquote, forgive, because obviously if there's a bill attached to it, then it's not forgiven. What this is most, would better explain this is a debt transfer. So who is the debt being transferred from, and who is the debt being transferred to? Well, obviously the debt is being transferred from the people who took out the loans, the student loans, and it's being transferred to you, me, and everybody else, right? Some of us have taken out loans ourselves at one point. Some of us haven't taken out loans, and yet we're still going to have to foot the bill. And I wanted to talk about this because I want you to make sure that you tune into the whole episode, because I want to give at least a couple different perspectives. Okay. And I don't want you to just make an assumption about what my point is here today, based on how I start. I have a few different perspectives, and I'm going to start with the fact that it just kind of blows my mind how some people are just so arrogant about the whole issue, and how some people are, I guess, mad at other folks who don't want to foot someone else's bill. Okay. So that's where I'm starting. So, and obviously when you talk about this, you're talking about things that people are posting online and stuff. People love to go to social media. We all do it, really. Go run to social media, and it gives us a platform to say what we want to say, right? But here, let me start with this. And I'm not trying to offend anyone. So as I'm sharing some things, as I'm reading some things that I saw on social media, some things are from people from people I know. I'm not trying to diss people or anything like that, but I am trying to have a conversation, and we have to get into the mindset of people. And in order to do that, we have to look at the things that they're sharing, that they're saying, which those things are a reflection of how they view things. So we're adults or young adults or whatever the case may be. And so we should be able to have these conversations. So if you see, or, if you hear something that you said come up, don't be offended. Okay. It just is what it is. And you put it out there. And so I'm going to talk about it. So I saw something online on social media, and I'll just read it to you. It just said, opposing student loan forgiveness because you paid off yours is like not feeding the hungry because you already ate. Let me repeat that because I want to make sure we get it. It says, Opposing student loan forgiveness because you paid off yours is like not feeding the hungry because you already ate. Let that sink in. Okay. So obviously the message here is that it's ridiculous for you to oppose student loan forgiveness. And there are people who oppose the student loan forgiveness because they have to now pay, or shall I say, we have to now pay for someone else's loan, even if we paid off ours. Okay? So this statement here is taking exception to that mindset. Again, opposing student loan forgiveness because you paid yours is like not feeding the hungry because you already ate. So if you oppose having to pay off somebody else's student loan after you paid off your student loan, then you've got issues. Then there's something wrong with you. And so in this situation, it appears we are demonizing people who don't want to pay their bills and somebody else's bills. And that's just flat out wrong. And so I want to address that. I saw that comment or that post and I decided to comment. Okay. So what I said was, and I'll just read what I posted, and I was not trying to be rude and I'm not trying to be rude now, but I take exception to that mindset that you have a problem, that you're selfish, that you have issues, whatever, if you don't want to pay off somebody else's student loan after you paid off yours. So I said, one of the problems with that theory is that most of the people who have these loan statistics show are making far more money than the people who are being coerced by government to pay off someone else's debt. Now, if one chooses to pay off someone's debt, that's one thing. But forcing it is another thing, akin to theft. So a saying worth considering is this: making someone pay for something he isn't responsible for is like making someone pay for something he isn't responsible for. And I threw in an LOL. And then I went on. Or to keep the food analogy going, making someone who has already paid his own debt pay for someone else's debt is like making someone pick up someone else's check at the restaurant after paying for his own meal. And let's be real. Some people choose to order something cheap from the menu because of the cost, or choose not to go to the restaurant because of the cost, or can't go to the restaurant because of the cost. And they shouldn't have to pay for someone else's steak at the restaurant. I continued. I could go on, but I won't. The beauty of compassion is that people can choose to give. But as Nancy Pelosi herself just said a few months ago, which was actually over a year ago now, the president doesn't, quote, have the power for debt forgiveness. He does not, end quote. That is Nancy Pelosi. And I wrote, I guess now he does. There are better ways to address the student loan problem. Stealing from the taxpayer isn't the way to go. But of course, this is all about politics as usual anyway. It's not about the people. The midterms are coming. And they forgave, transferred is more accurate, they forgave my debt, folks, is the name of the latest voting block for voters in that category foolish enough to fall for the game. So my point is this: there are people in life who do not eat out. Right? Let's just use that food analogy, right? They don't eat out because they can't afford to eat out, because it's expensive and they know that they can't afford it. Or they go out to eat, and when they do, they order something on the menu they can afford. Okay? And it would be wrong. I think we would all agree that it would be wrong to make those people who either stay home because they've assessed the situation, they've assessed that situation, they realize financially it doesn't fit, it doesn't work for us. So they stay home, or they go to the restaurant and they order something really cheap and whatever, just to get out, get the experience of it, whatever. But they order something cheap because they know they can't afford the steak. It would be wrong to take those people and say, I know that you didn't go to a restaurant, but so-and-so went and got steak. They can't afford the steak. So, or it's a struggle for them to afford the steak. So you pay for the steak. Or if you went out and you bought, something cheap, and they say, well, you bought something cheap, but this person bought the steak, so we need you to pay for their steak. Or maybe you bought something expensive yourself. I don't know, but you paid for yours, and then you have to pay for theirs too. You get my point. And this is not, and I said, stick with me through the end, because I'm not trying to demean or bash or blame even the people who did take out a loan, who have loans, and now other people have to pay back their loans. Those people's loans. I'm not doing that. Okay. Now, and I'll talk about that. But I am saying that the blame rests on the president, and there are other, to go to college is too expensive. The interest rates are out of this world, right? There are different ways. There are better ways to deal with it than to take from people. This is theft. This is government overreach, and it's akin to theft. And all these people who are complaining about people who don't want to pay the debt, and they're like, I can't believe these people don't want to pay off somebody else's debt. Really? Only people who are saying that are probably people who are getting their debts paid off, because I can't imagine that people honestly think that it's okay to require people to pay for someone else's student loan. I mean, are we that far gone? Are we that into partisanship that we don't see what's wrong with that? And I just gave you the illustration of the steak. And the only reason why I gave the food illustration, it's a perfect one, but I gave that food illustration because that was presented. That was presented as if, you opposing a student loan forgiveness because you paid off yours is like not feeding the hungry because you already ate. Doesn't make any sense. Now, I had loans to pay too. And there was a time in my life when my salary was being garnished because I owed. And I'm glad I paid it off. And now what? I worked to pay that off. Am I getting money back? No. What am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to pay for someone else's loan. After I had to go through all the stuff that I went through when I was, starting out in my career, I didn't have a whole lot of money flowing over, and they took my money to pay off the loan. And I paid, and I paid it off. But now that I paid it off, I've got to pay off somebody else's loan too. Okay? Not right. And I think we could all agree that we need to look into perhaps the whole student loan situation, these colleges, the interest rate, all that stuff. And that what the president is doing is putting a Band-Aid on something that's not going to solve anything. And the purpose of it is to this other voting bloc and wanting to, the midterm elections are coming up in November. But here's somebody else's post. Okay. Someone else, how you have, when there's a hurricane or, some kind of tragedy or something, and then you see these marked safe from hurricane, marked safe from, whatever the earthquake, the hurricane, whatever. So some smart aleck posted on Facebook, marked safe from being bitter that student loan payments were forgiven. I ain't going to name the person who holds public office, local public office somewhere, not in the state that I'm in now anyway. But this is supposed to be cute and making a point. Marked safe from being bitter that student loan payments were forgiven. You know what? All these people who want to act like you're not kind if you don't do what the government tells you to do, they baffle me. Because it's so easy to be kind with other people's money, right? So you can just be so generous with other people's money? Why don't you go pay off these people's loans? And you have every right to do that. And I have every right to do that. And that's one thing. It'd be one thing for me to say, hey, I want to pay off so-and-so's college loan. But you know what? You're not going to find people who want to do that. What they want to do is watch you pay. So this person's marked safe from being bitter. Right. Really interesting. People aren't bitter. People just are sick and tired of the nonsense, of the theft, of screwball policy. Okay? And they're not happy about it. Now, so I make that point. Now, the interesting thing too, again, I made that point in the one comment, and that is, from what I understand, the people who have student loans, they're making more money, from what statistics show, than the people who are going to be paying their loans, paying off their loans. So you've got this person who took out this huge loan because maybe they wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever they wanted to be. I don't know. They took out this loan that they can't pay for. And so now they've got this job and they're making a certain amount of money, but the person who's helping to pay that off doesn't even make as much money. Does that make sense? Somebody maybe decided, like the person who didn't go to the restaurant or went to the restaurant and ordered something less expensive than a steak, so somebody went to a college that they could afford, perhaps. And they didn't go to college at all because they thought, I can't be saddled with this kind of debt. So I'm going to sacrifice this. And now that they've done that and they sacrificed and they held back, now they're going to be paying for someone else's loan. So it's not just the people who, like myself, who've already paid their student loans, having to pay other people's loans. It's also maybe people who did not get a student loan because wisdom told them not to. And they're paying off a loan from somebody who may be making more money. And what else I've heard is that many people, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's quite a percentage of people who go to college, they take out these loans, they go to college, and they never do get that degree, but they still owe the money. So we're going to be paying for that for them. And then this person has the nerve to say, mark safe from being bitter that student loan payments were forgiven. I'm not talking about being bitter. I'm talking about there are people who are common sense and they are angry because it's worth being angry over. So often if you were kind, everybody, if you were a Christian, the Christian thing to do would be not to be. No, Christians don't got to be no fools. In fact, Christians have more wisdom. That's why the Bible says that as a man has purposed in his heart, so let him give. As you purpose in your heart. So if you purpose in your heart to pay off people's student loans, then that's what you do. But to take it from people when somebody else went into debt is theft, and it's wrong. And we should not be turning the other cheek about that or looking the other way, however you want to say it. And then he used the term forgiven. Marked safe from being bitter that student loan payments were forgiven. They're not forgiven. That's the point. If they were forgiven, that would be one thing. Absolutely. Forgive it. It's gone. Poof. But it's not being forgiven. It's being transferred. So the responsibility that one person has is being transferred to another person. Okay, you get my point. But now I told you to hang with me because there's something else that we need to deal with here. And that is this. There are people who are upset, as they should be, with this debt transfer. That they're going to have to pay for somebody else's debt. And they're blaming people who are working hard, who plan to continue to work hard, who never asked anybody to pay off their debt. The Biden has decided to do this, but there are people who have not done that, who've not said, hey, pay off my debt. And they don't even think it's right. And yet other people are blasting them making them feel bad about something that they didn't write the policy. It's not their decision to implement the policy. Someone that I know, she posted something online, and she talked about that. She talked about the fact that she graduated from college debt free because of, hard work and generosity of her parents, and her husband did the same, and college was far more affordable back then. And she said, but unfortunately, she and her husband, didn't save as much as they wished that they had in preparation for their daughter's education. Okay. And so there are debts attached to that. Okay. Whether they took out loans, and they said whether they should have or shouldn't have is irrelevant. They owe the money. They're going to repay it as quickly as possible to avoid the extra interest. Okay. And then she said that they are not at all in favor of this debt, quote unquote, forgiveness. She said, and I quote, "We took out the loan, we owe the money, and we'll work our butts off as long as it takes to repay it." Okay. And then she went on to say, we need to be careful in our criticism of this. She said crazy, she used the adjective crazy, this crazy decision that Biden has made. Well, we need to be careful as we criticize that, not to demonize those who did find it necessary to take out loans. And then she went on to say the people who are working hard to pay it off. And quote, she said, not everybody who took out a loan is standing in line for a handout. Okay. We make choices. Some of those choices hurt us. Okay. Some people have taken out the loan, whether people think they took too much or shouldn't have taken it or didn't, whatever. The bottom line is that not everybody has their hand out saying, oh, yeah. This is great. This is wonderful. Somebody gets to pay off my loan. That, not everybody who's got a loan feels that way. They didn't choose this path. And so my response to her post was this. I totally agree with you that people shouldn't blame those who took out loans and are willing to pay them off. This thing rests on the Biden administration for sure. The only way people who have loans should be blamed is if they took out loans knowing others would have to pay them off. And that is clearly not the case. The people who rub me the wrong way are the ones who are berating people for not wanting to pay for other people's loans. And then I told her well-stated post. Okay, so it's not like these people say, hey, I'm going to take out a loan because eventually Biden as president, he's going to make other people pay for it. So let's do this. They didn't do that. Okay. And so to then try to make them feel bad as if they're getting a handout is wrong, because many people who see how ridiculous this thing is and they still owe loans, they'll tell you that it's wrong. They'll tell you that I'm willing to work hard to pay off what I owe because that's my responsibility. And I have great respect for those people. Okay? So let's step back and not put everybody in a box and be ticked off at people who are doing their best to work hard to pay off their loans and didn't ask nobody for jack. So that's important too. And that's why I said, hang in there with me, because while I am blasting this ridiculous theft of the American people to pay for something that they're not responsible for, and while I am blasting people who are blasting people who have the common sense to know that they shouldn't have to pay other people's debts, I'm also not blasting people who have debt to pay and didn't ask nobody to pay it for them. So we sometimes get off on these tangents, and we have to be careful and look at the whole situation and just be wise and not be cruel. And I mean, because there are people who walk around feeling, and I know this, walking around feeling guilty because they may have a debt that's going to be transferred. They didn't ask for it to be transferred. It just is what it is because of Biden. Okay. So let's place our attention where it needs to be. And that is on this, like I said, ridiculous decision that we cannot afford as a nation. I mean, we can't afford it. It's not going to solve a problem. It's a political move. It's downright foolish, and it's unfair. It's absolutely unfair, as well as unwise. So, I don't know, but that's what we get with this administration. I don't know what's going to happen in the next election, but it's got to be better than this. It really does. And we as American people need to not be so partisan that we are so blinded that we can't see when somebody's just doing a bad job and making bad decisions. And we can't be so selfish as to be like, well, yeah, pay. Because there are, while I say that there are people who do not feel that way, that they don't want people paying off what is their responsibility. You have other people out there who put these posts up and stuff who have absolutely no problem with other people paying their debt, and they're all about it. They're all about it. So they've been marked safe from basically caring about your behind. And so we can't be so partisan that there are some people, it doesn't matter what Biden does, it's okay because it's Biden or he's a Democrat or whatever the nonsense is. Guys, we're talking about common sense, and we're talking about the well-being of a nation, and we're talking about families. We got families who are trying to figure out how to pay gas, and now not only do they have to try to figure out how to pay gas, now they're paying for other people's colleges and stuff. And people are applauding this and thinking that that's okay. Somebody pays the bill. And that, as Sarah Palin has said in I think it was CPAC 2014, somebody reposted that recently. And then I did, she said, there is no free Frito. She said, there is no free ride. Okay. Somebody pays for everything. And then she said, if you don't know who that someone is, it's probably you. Yeah, it is you. In this case, it is me, it's you, and it's theft. We better wake up. We had better wake up. So I've had my say on this issue, and you can see I'm trying to cover the whole gamut and be fair and be absolutely fair to the whole situation. So we shall see how this turns out. And continuing to pray, please. Let's continue to pray for our nation, and because we need it. We really need the hand of God. Okay, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Adrienne Ross Show, a product of the BMG Network. And feel free to communicate with me. AdrienneRossCom@gmail.com, AdrienneRossCom@gmail.com. And remember, go to the BMGnetwork.com, check out the other podcasts, and also go to a podcast platform and leave a rating and a review. Much, much, much appreciated. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Adrienne Ross Show. The Adrienne Ross Show was produced and edited in the BMG studio. The music was provided by Kevin MacLeod. Find more episodes of The Adrienne Ross Show at thebmgnetwork.com and major podcast platforms. Be sure to tune in regularly. You don't want to miss even one episode.